Hey folks, welcome to the Thursday edition of the Whitfield Report. I'm your host, Sam Whitfield, and today's episode is going to be a little different. I'm actually going to be playing a flashback episode of the Whitfield Analysis, which is my own podcast. As many of you folks may know, I interviewed Ben Shapiro back in 2012, and it's been a while since I've played that interview. Many people have asked for it, so since we just celebrated our 11th year anniversary of podcasting here at the Whitfield Report, I figured I would go ahead and play that episode for you this week for the Thursday edition. So, without further ado, I'll go ahead and play that for you after the quick commercial break. Enjoy. Alright, so before I play the interview for you guys, I just want to give you some quick background as to how this originally came about. So, as I've mentioned on the show before, I'm a huge fan of Andrew Breitbart, the original founder of Breitbart News, a true conservative journalist and a true conservative warrior who will be missed. And I also explained in my tribute to Andrew Breitbart's show how his death, while it was a sad moment, was also the moment that really activated me. So, at the time Breitbart died, Ben Shapiro was one of the editors at large of Breitbart.com. And I had always wanted to get Andrew on the show, Andrew Breitbart. But of course, since he passed away, I couldn't. So one day I just kind of got the crazy idea when I was a senior in high school to just reach out to Ben and see if he'd be willing to come on my show and talk, politics and talk about his background. And at the time we were in the midst of the 2012 election when I interviewed him in October of 2012. So I emailed him thinking that, I wouldn't get a response, and lo and behold, he actually said yes, and we made the arrangements to have him on the Whitfield Analysis, and it was great. Now, at the time, and this is also important to note, I was hosting the Whitfield Analysis on Blog Talk Radio, which many of my fellow podcasters will know Blog Talk Radio. Basically, how that system would work is you would basically call in to their service, almost like a conference call service, and you would call in using your cell phone and broadcast that way, and then you would have a control panel online where you could accept calls or play video clips or play audio clips, and whatnot. And that was how the broadcasts were done. The reason I bring that up is the Blog Talk Radio audio quality is not that great compared to what we have today. The show basically sounds like you're on a conference call, and your guests sound like they're on a conference call. So I bring that up, only to say, before any guys start, bitching and moaning and writing me tweets and emails, the audio quality sucks, this is terrible. Well, keep in mind it was in 2012, and, podcasting was not as big as it was even back then as it is today. We're really living in a golden age nowadays of podcasting. But, it was kind of broadcast internet radio back then. So anyway, nevertheless, I want to play part 1 for you of my interview with Ben Shapiro, and I hope you guys will enjoy it. Enjoy.
So, first of all, sir, I'd like to ask you a little bit about yourself. How did you get started in the blogging industry, I guess?
Well, I started off when I was really young. I started off as a columnist for the UCLA Daily Bruin, and then got a syndicated column about a year later when I was 17 years old. So I was the youngest syndicated columnist in the country. It was about that time that I met Andrew, actually. Andrew saw my column in the UCLA Daily Bruin and was impressed that there was some – this is how Andrew was. He was impressed that there was somebody there who was conservative. And he emailed me out of the blue. He was the other half of Matt Drudge's website at that point. He had nothing to, he had not started his own enterprises at all. And he said, why don't we get together? And we ended up at like a taco shop in Westwood, which was typical Andrew. Over time, my career grew, his career grew, and by the time he hired me, we had been friends for, over a decade. And he said on Dennis Miller's show that it was the longest political flirtation in American history, because we'd been talking about working together for about a decade. So he hired me, and unfortunately 3 weeks later he dropped dead, which was obviously tragic for everybody. So it was through the grace of God that I was allowed the opportunity, number one, to know Andrew, but number two, to help out when he died, carrying forward his legacy.
Wow. Well, he was one of my heroes as well. I don't think I've ever seen anyone more passionate than him. What was he like as a person?
It's funny. Andrew described himself pretty well. He understood himself pretty well. He said that he basically had two modes. One was kind of sheer hilarity, and the other was complete and utter righteous indignation, which is, of course, the name of his book. And that was pretty much that's pretty accurate. That's who Andrew was. He was either extraordinarily upset with the political situation and fighting all the time, or he was jocular. I think he used the word jocularity a lot. So that's who Andrew was. He was hysterically funny. One of his favorite things to do with me was that I'm an Orthodox Jew and very socially conservative. Andrew was not socially conservative. He wasn't socially liberal. He wasn't really into social politics very much. But he was very, he used to like making dirty jokes in front of me, and then waiting for me to laugh, and then he'd kind of look at me and wait for me to laugh, and then he'd start laughing hysterically as soon as I gave him a little bit of a chuckle. So that was one of Andrew's favorite things. That's kind of who Andrew was. He was a prankster. He saw himself as a merry prankster. He was somebody who liked to have fun with it. In the last years of his life, obviously, as he became bigger and bigger, I think it was still fun for him, but it also became a much more serious game for him. He became much more serious about it. He always had a good time with it, but he saw kind of what was at stake in the country, and especially with the leftist reaction against the Tea Party, he became much more of the righteous indignation guy, and the jocularity guy had to take a backseat because we were living in serious times.
Yeah, definitely. Well, he will be missed. One question relating to his death that I do want to bring up real quick before we get into Benghazi, because I've been getting emails about this. There are some individuals out there who believe that he was assassinated.
No, it's not true. There's no evidence to that whatsoever. I knew Andrew longer than anybody at the company, with the exception of Larry Soloff, who knew him since he was 5 years old. There's no evidence to that effect whatsoever. Andrew had a congenital heart defect. He was adopted, so nobody knew that he had a congenital heart defect because nobody knew his parents. And so he just dropped dead. I mean, there was no alcohol involved, no drugs involved. It wasn't about his weight. It wasn't about anything except probably a certain amount of stress and this congenital heart defect. There's no evidence whatsoever that there was anything dirty afoot. I know in the days after he died, there's a lot of talk about that, and those of us who knew him well, we knew that it was nonsense right off the bat. But there were a lot of people obviously who were trying to make a big deal out of that or suggest that it was the case. There's, again, no evidence to suggest that, and in fact, there's evidence to the contrary. So.
All right, well, that's good to hear. I never believed it either myself. But anyway, one of the reasons why I brought you on here, other than that I'm a big fan of your work, is I saw your article that you wrote. You've been writing. You guys have been covering this whole issue with Benghazi a lot, and so I just want to ask you a couple questions. So my show is targeted primarily at the high school generation and the college generation. So my first question is, what do you think is going on with Benghazi? Why has the president been so incompetent with the situation, and why is this important to America?
Well, I mean, it should be important to every.
We'll be back for part 2 of my Ben Shapiro interview after these messages from our sponsor.
American when Americans get killed, but I mean beyond that, this is a reflection of the president's cowardly foreign policy. He's somebody who had suggested that everything was sort of hunky-dory in Libya and preferred to ignore the ramifications of what was going on in terms of the terrorist threat there, just like he's preferred to ignore the ramifications of the terrorist threat, particularly Islamic terrorism everywhere else. There are several issues to do with Benghazi that are incredibly disturbing. The first is, how is it even possible that we don't have Marines on the ground protecting our ambassador in Benghazi? We're not talking about having Marines on the ground to protect our ambassador in, say, France, where, by the way, we do have Marines that protect the ambassador. We're talking about freaking Benghazi. Okay, Benghazi is one of the most terrorist-laden places on earth. The entire city was controlled by a terrorist group called Ansar al-Sharia. It turns out that was the exact terrorist group that murdered the ambassador. We didn't have security there. That's question number one. Question number two is why the president then proceeded to blame a YouTube video for several months, right? I mean, for weeks and weeks and weeks, going on 2 months, he blamed a YouTube video for the assassination of our ambassador, which was insane. I mean, there was nothing to do with the YouTube video. So that begs the question of why did he lie about it? And the answer as to why he lied about it, it's turning out now, is because he had every ability to stop what was going on in the terrorist attack, apparently. Apparently we had drones in the air, in the area. We had gunships that were available to go to the site of the terrorist attack. We had agents available, and they were told to stand down eventually because they were heroes. They just ignored the order and went to save their comrades. But this is what the Obama administration is all about. They're cowards. And on foreign policy, they've been hiding behind the bin Laden kill for several years at this point. And the fact is this, the bin Laden kill is not a foreign policy, and any president, including Jimmy Carter, would have made the call to kill bin Laden. That was not even a close call. What is a closer call is, do you send support to save our ambassador? And President Obama stood there and did nothing. Apparently, I mean, there are now reports coming out that he was sitting there watching it live in the Situation Room at the White House as this whole thing was going down and didn't do a thing to help save our folks. So, I mean, it should be disturbing to every American when the President of the United States is not doing anything to protect our ambassadors, to protect U.S. staff. This has nothing to do with politics. This is impeachable stuff. And for him to suggest that people are just playing politics over the death of Americans, it's insipid. There's no justification for that accusation. His righteous indignation during the debate was maybe the saddest display of political chicanery that I've seen in my lifetime.
I could agree with you more. I think it is impeachable stuff. What the whole thing just stinks. You know, I'm a senior in high school, and I've been in this talk radio thing. I've been involved politically for the last 4 years, doing a blog and a talk show, and I've never seen this much corruption from any political office. One of the things that completely baffles me, though, it doesn't shock me, but I think it is an issue that needs to be brought up. Why are we not hearing about this from the mainstream media?
Well,
do you think?
I mean, the answer is because, and this is one of Andrew's big kicks, but, you know, the mainstream media is, they're lackeys. They're lackeys for the Obama administration. On the Sunday shows this morning, I mean, our lead piece on the site was this, you know, written by Joel Pollack, who's our editor-in-chief, and Joel and I discussed it before he wrote it. The fact is that the Sunday shows this morning didn't even ask a single question about it. The only person who asked a question about it was Bob Schieffer, and it was a follow-up question to something that a Republican asked. So what we're watching here is the mainstream media trying to run out the clock in this election cycle. They think that if they just ignore Benghazi, ignore Libya, it won't have any effect on the election. They're wrong. Obama's going to lose, and one of the reasons he's going to lose is because he's a coward on foreign policy, and we're seeing it.
Do you think that, like, I don't want to go into conspiracy theories here, but I honestly think that the president is trying to hide something sinister here. Am I the only one that feels that way, or, I mean, No,
I mean, I think we have to wait and see what all the information is before we know exactly what it was he's trying to hide. But there's no question he's trying to hide something. You know, at the beginning we thought maybe he was trying to hide the fact that there was a terrorist attack at all, and now it appears that he was trying to hide the fact that he could have stopped it and did nothing. And now there are, you know, other rumors out there about what exactly we were doing in Benghazi in the first place. There was a CIA office there. You know, there are questions as to what was happening there. So what we're watching right now is the unraveling of the Obama foreign policy, and Paul Ryan has said that, and so has Mitt Romney, and they're exactly correct. Obama's foreign policy is based on, I mean, it really is chewing gum and bailing wire, and they have no clue what they're doing. Or if they do have a clue what they're doing, it's even more nefarious than I'm suggesting right now. Because if they have a clue what they're doing and this is how they act, then there is no justification for this administration.
No, there certainly is not. Well, Mr. Shapiro, I certainly thank you for your time, and I'd like to talk to you more in private, maybe about helping out with Breitbart and some of that stuff. But in the meantime, thank you for your time, and thank you for coming on. And where can we find you other than Breitbart?
You can follow me on Twitter at Ben Shapiro. That's the easiest way to see all my stuff. I also write a syndicated column for Town Hall. And if you want to listen to me on the radio, you can tune in every weekday, 6 to 9 a.m., KRLA 870, which is one of the stations in Los Angeles. So KRLA870.com.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot.
And that'll do it, ladies and gentlemen. I want to thank you so much for listening to my Ben Shapiro interview. Thank you for supporting the podcast for 11 years now. And I'll be back later this week with more podcasts.